Welcome to another episode of the Better SMB podcast, hosted by David Altina and me, Rob Bull. We are here to help small and medium-sized businesses like yours achieve more. Whether you're looking for practical tips, inspiring stories, or expert advice, we have got you covered. Join us as we dive into the world of business, sharing insights and strategies to help you grow and succeed. This week, we have an awesome guest who have just done some pretty cool research into productivity in New Zealand. During the chat, we discuss what the research is telling us and what you, as an SME owner and leader, can do to lift up your productivity. And we also explore what the wider business community can do to move the productivity needle in New Zealand. This is a really special episode for us. I hope you enjoy it. Well, that's enough for me. Let's get started. On with the podcast.
Welcome back to the Better SMB. I'm going to hand to Rob, who's going to introduce our guest for this episode. Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, David. We have got a really cool guest today because this person who we're interviewing and asked, I've got a few questions for them. They have stirred up a little bit of interest around productivity in New Zealand SME sector recently, which is pretty much in our ballpark. And they've even their research, which was titled Boosting Productivity in New Zealand SMEs. The NBR, National Business Review, had picked it up and interviewed this person. So I was just curious to get a little bit more background and information around this report, the research, and the person and the ideas that came with it. So that person is David Altina. Welcome, David, to the podcast.
Oh, how about that? What a surprise. Thanks for letting me come in.
Excellent. Nothing like stroking our own egos on this, but in reality, this is how David and I really got to know each other because we talked about the research while he was doing it and some of the findings, and yeah, it was really interesting to see the final outcome. I'm going to start with my first question really, starting with the end. Give me the summary. What was the outcome of the research, the executive summary of what you found, what are the sort of big 2 or 3 findings that everyone should hear about?
Right. So productivity is a massive subject. And when I took this on, I really underestimated it. I was meant to be able to do this as a part of the MBA in 10,000 words. I think I got to 25,000 and I wasn't even kind of getting started. It felt like boiling the ocean. But as a nation, our productivity sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about your Outlook tasks or using Word or Excel better. It's about maximizing the return on investment we put into producing the products and services businesses produce, sell, and deliver. There's heaps of SMEs in New Zealand and there's huge potential for economic growth, innovation, and employment, but we can't get it right. For over 30 years, we've sucked and we're being outperformed by pretty much everyone. Reports from places like the defunct Productivity Commission, they say we're producing more, but I mean, really, we're just working longer and, not really smarter at it as well. Look at other countries like Ireland. 30 years ago, they were miles behind New Zealand. Now they're miles in front. We need to work 11 hours extra every day just to keep up. So I went into this and looked at what enables and constrains our businesses to achieving high levels of productivity from the perspective of business-to-business leaders. So lawyers, business consultants, people in tech, people not in tech, coaches, advisors to local government, and professional directors. So why did I go to those people? Well, they get to work across lots of different businesses and they generate an income, usually based on an hourly rate, by helping organizations get better. So they see a lot and they're also able to build their own IP around that and then support businesses to get better. So the key findings, the core theme, we need to enhance our leadership and management capabilities, which is kind of funny, right? So to be more productive, we need to get our leadership and management teams to think about being more productive. It's a kind of obvious, but it's something we're missing. And, that's something this podcast is about. On top of that, there were 6 additional themes around innovation, being customer centric, the general business environment and the challenges we all face, financial strategies, resource management, and operational excellence, all really, really big, nerdy terms that sound super complicated. So what I did was I developed a productivity framework with a 3-step implementation approach. So the first step was just getting aware of what productivity means for your business. Pick something to measure it, track it back 3 years, and figure out if you're getting better or worse. It's a great starting point. The next step was developing the solid leadership foundations and working through what I call the leadership checklist. Do you have mission, vision, and values? That becomes the foundation for distributed leadership. Do you have a business plan that you work from and keep up to date? Do you track your progress to that each quarter through the development of KPIs? And as a business owner, do you have an enhanced level of financial awareness? Because most people, I believe, probably don't. The last step is about getting out of the way of your business and implementing distributed leadership and strategic metrics. So you operate your business to this productivity framework that I've developed, and it's split into quadrants. We'll probably talk more about that later. And allow your teams to take ownership for the areas of the business that they operate. Have them define the metrics that roll up into the overarching business objectives that you can then run the business by. So it sounds simple, but a lot of it's kind of common sense stuff. And as business owners, we're just not doing the basics. And for me, it turns out simple isn't easy.
Yeah, that's very much the theme. I've been talking with clients all this week. As simple is really hard. Okay, I just want to, before I go on to the next question, the leadership and management capability, the framework and the challenges you just raised, I can follow, you can follow, and it feels quite straightforward. But there's a whole lot of stuff there that would be quite foreign to a lot of businesses. Even if we look at the financial capability or the financial literacy of SMB owners, and certainly their strategy. I go back to a stat one of the economic development agencies came up with it only a year or so ago, which highlighted only 50% of businesses, and this is more than just SMEs, and I'd say if we research just SMEs, it would be a worse stat, but only so 50% of them had a plan, not even a strategy, just a plan. So when we look at leadership and management capability, what do you mean by that? What's the missing gap through your research from a summary point of view? Because we'll get into the detail a little bit later. I just wanted to flesh that one out because I agree. I think there's a massive capability issue in our SMEs in New Zealand.
So I'll speak generally. People don't get into business to get into business. They're not building an asset. They're getting into business to own their job. And as such, they kind of want to just do their job. People who run businesses employ people, they bring them on, but there's no real structure. There's no real, this is what we're driving for. We're climbing Mount Everest. This is the vision. Who's on board? Let's go. Right? We're all just really ho-hum about it, I think, as opposed to, people who are successful in business, they get their 3 Bs, the BMW, the batch, and the boat, and then they kind of tap out. No one's really doing this deliberate. They just own their job in a lot of cases.
Totally agree. Understand that, and I absolutely agree. So that was the brief overall summary. When you were, because you mentioned that you were doing this as part of your MBA, which congratulations of completing that. I always tip my hat off to people who have that fortitude to go through that whole process. What prompted this topic? There must have been a trigger point somewhere. There must have been some seed of thought might have been your experiences through your past roles that you've had. But yeah, why productivity? Why SMEs? Why now?
The MBA was a really, really interesting journey where you get to know yourself quite well. And one of the things I realized, even though I've worked in the tech industry for like 30 years in all different parts of it, I wasn't selling innovation and technology, although I thought I was. What I was selling was productivity. And what I realized was, regardless of the business you're in, there's always all these challenges around just trying to get things done. And then, when you're trying to sell innovation, trying to sell technology that can support that for businesses, every day you're seeing organizations that could invest in innovation. The opportunity and returns are staring them in the face and they just won't do it. And I was like, why is that? Not realizing I need to be looking through the lens of productivity, because that pulls in all these other factors. It doesn't just go, hey, buy some tech, you can do this little thing quicker or whatever, right? It's getting the people to the right place where they realize they want to be better, so that then they can embrace those ideas. You know what I mean? My perception was we're operating in this environment where we're kind of waiting for the government to help. And, spoiler alert, Santa doesn't live in Wellington and he's not coming to fix things. I'm sorry. And if you combine that with what I think is like almost perpetual panic that SME business owners have, I need to deliver something. I've got to get paid by my client so I can pay the team. And then I've got to sell something, because when the team finish the job they're on, they've got to have something to go to so I can get paid, so I can pay the team again, right? So our business owners don't really have this ability to look up and out. They're not able to think, strategize, plan, and innovate. It's just nose to the grindstone. So I thought, well, we can do better. And I wanted to create something a business owner could pick up and start taking action on tomorrow. That's really what led me to this.
Using that as a segue onto, I guess, the next phase of the questions that I had, we're going to go on to a two-level question here. I want to really dig into, what does your report, if we really plain language it out, because it is relatively easy reading, but if we absolutely just simplify it down at a micro level, at an SMB level, if Mr. and Mrs. SME owner picks this up, what can they take from this? What are the key nuggets that they can translate that into their business on Monday?
They can probably go right to the back of the report, actually, and pick up the roadmap. And really, for me, the takeaway is start taking action. Make this a priority. And, step one, what's your business do? Figure out what a productivity metric is that makes sense for your business. So, if you're a farmer, manufacturer, or distributor, you're generating revenue from the land, you've invested in some plant and machinery and staff, and they make something and you sell it. If you're in retail or you're in hospitality, you're a destination people go to and they buy stuff from you. You've got some staff costs and you generate revenue selling stock items and experiences, and you make your money ultimately from margining products. That's why I pay $6.50 for an oak flat white, if anyone wants to know my order, or $12 for a craft beer. I'm paying for the experience. If I'm a tradie, I've got a yard, I've got a depot, a commercial building, I sell some products, but most of my money is made from selling my time. Think plumber, electrician. Then lastly, if you're in, doing a professional service, most of your revenue is actually just generated from billing your time. So like I talked about in episode 1, a simple metric for many businesses is just simply total revenue, total amount you spend on salaries, how much profit you make before tax, and divide each of those by the number of staff you've got. Get your last 3 years of financials and do those calculations. That's probably step 1. And then step 2, if you work through the leadership checklist, like Simon talked about in the last episode, vision's important. If you don't know where you're going, you'll never know if you got there. Make sure your business has a vision and you've defined your values. But
you were just starting to answer my question, really, but what's in that leadership checklist? What's the sort of, the main chunks out of that? So we've got vision, mission,
Yep.
which I'm not
do
a
you
big
have?
fan of, by the
Oh,
way.
fair enough. We can argue that out, but um, do you have a business plan? Right.
Yep.
Great. If you do, you're probably in the top 5% of businesses. Now, remember, a business plan is about the next 12 months.
Yep.
It's actually not a strategy, but let's walk before we run. Okay.
For sure.
Then, if you've got a business plan, if you're going to do $1.2 million in revenue this year, then you're going to be doing 100 grand a month. Let's make sure you're there or thereabouts every quarter so that you know if you're on track or not on track. And then how financially aware are you? If you were going to go sit down and talk to your accountant, could you talk about return on assets, stock turnover ratios, the capital you've got employed in your business, debtor days, or your cash conversion cycle? Now, if you're building a business intentionally and you're building that business so it's an asset that you can either step away from and have produce income for you and have a manager working in it, or it's a business that you are ultimately going to sell, then you need to know these things, because these things help drive the value of your business, and that's your investment, and you want to maximize that both while you own it and at the point you sell it, right? So if you can do those things, you've now got an opportunity to grow your business. And then when you spot those opportunities where you need to approach a bank because, hey, I've got this opportunity, but I need $1 million to invest in something so I can sell it for 7 million or whatever. Now that you've got a plan, you can show them how on track you are. You can talk to them about the opportunity and you understand the finances of your business. You can give them the information they need so that they can lend you the money, which is also part of the problem, right? We all struggle to get money. I think we suck at doing business cases.
Yep. So a couple of things I really want to drill down on that. So you mentioned about all the accountancy aspect of the business and getting the financials. I know I get confused even with half the stuff you've done, only because I hate it. But a lot of business owners do, particularly SMEs, right? So when we're going back to the development of our leadership and management capability, which came out of the report, it's about go and find an accounting literacy course or get a business mentor that can cost effectively train you up to what the heck did that all mean? Because then I can go and work with my accountant in a smarter way.
Yep.
So
or get a financial controller. If your business is at the level that you can bring someone on to do that, if you're the person that understands the service you deliver and all these things, then that's what you should be doing in your business. And you need to hire someone who knows these things, but also can teach you so that you can learn.
But if they're not in that, I know a number of the chambers around New Zealand do lunch and learn sessions. So it's about, even if they're not having those as a topic, go and join the chamber and ask them to put those on. This is how we can use reports like yours to actually stir up real solutions that will help that capability. And we're just talking about one real small tactical most, which is improving our accounting literacy. So that's one. So I'm sure there's a number of places that can help. The regional business partner funding could help with some of that. And I think even the awareness of that system and financial help isn't out there as well. So that's one thing. Business plan. You know my delight around business plans and how great many of the templates are that are floating around. Where or what template, where could an SME owner who's listening to this podcast, they want to lift up the game around business planning, what would you recommend? Where would they start?
I'm pretty sure there's a few government, dare I say it, resources in the business planning space that are somewhat okay. I mean, really, a plan is just simply, what are you aiming to achieve in the next 12 months?
Yep.
And how are you going to go about doing that, right? It doesn't need to be super complex, triple backflip, macro filled Excel spreadsheet. We're audio only on the podcast at the moment, but behind you's a blackboard, right?
Yep.
It could be as simple as, having a handful of numbers up on the blackboard and the key actions that you've got to do every day, every month, whatever it is, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Sure. Because we've talked about this, I think it was episode 2, avoiding those 28-page documents that a lot of the financial institutions roll out or have accessibility. I would just personally Google a business model canvas, a one-pager, print it out on A3 if you want to write some more detail into it. That's a one-pager that talks about what's your point of difference, how you're going to act, ask you the questions around how you got, what's your channel to your clients, what's your point of difference. It's got a small box for financials, how you're going to measure that, there's your supply chain. It covers the key competencies of a plan on a one page,
Yep.
right?
Yep. And what I also liked there is, while financials are important and important for you to understand, you talked about the small box containing the financials. The financials are the scoreboard, right? But to get
I
to
would
that,
even go, I would even go that the financials are your lag measures, and you've got a whole lot of lead measures, which might be your how many inquiries have you got, or your website views and all of that kind of stuff. Because if that's ticking off nicely, your financials should take care of itself.
Absolutely. I mean, you only need to look at rugby, right? Usually the team with the most possession and the most territory win the game, right? The lag measures the score. The lead measure is who's got the ball.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I just wanted to just press on those topics because they follow certainly the first two steps of your 3-step staged approach to the maturity of an SME, and particularly at that micro SME level is get that awareness. So that's all those metrics that you're talking about, get better at it, go to a course or get a mentor. And this is also, so many businesses are quite happy to share their knowledge, not their IP, but their knowledge and experience. If you see a experienced business owner, we're in New Zealand. If you go and ring them up and ask them, they'll probably say, "Yeah, I'll tell you how I've done it."
That's a big thing.
Even one action.
Innovation and collaboration, right? One of the things I pointed out in my report is the power of an ecosystem, and actually I even termed it the power of co-opetition. So I work in the IT sector, and in previous roles, I've had partnerships with our competitors because they're delivering one thing into a client and we're delivering another. And that's great because we get to learn from each other. And I would even go and meet these people outside of, those customer engagements and that sort of thing, because we do have to work together to support our clients to be better, right? So if you've got a problem with whatever it is in your business, go and talk to a business you work with and go, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. How do you guys solve that problem?"
Which is another good little segue into two more. I'll go into two more sub themes around your SME productivity sub themes for Mr. and Mrs. Business owner. The first one would be collaboration networking. From your conversations with the experts that you went through to research with, what came out of that could be some tips and tricks for the business owner?
So that is basically all I do. That is my job. I collaborate and I network. I go meet people. I drink lots of coffee. I drink lots of beer. And, well, I probably drink more coffee than beer, to be honest, these days. But, because the more people you know, the easier it is to solve a problem, right? And also through doing that, you find out who's great at things and how you can leverage their services and their skills to support you potentially. And then if you do enough of that, you start building referral opportunities. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine, or the rising tide lifts all boats, right? Rather than there being one winner with everyone, standing on top of everyone else, if we can create this environment of collaboration where we're all happy to support each other, then we can really embrace innovation across businesses.
So for that young baker who loves and is just an artist with a bit of pastry, and they're getting up at 3 a.m. and they're working their absolute buns off, pun intended, to make a difference in their business, how do they collaborate and network when they're earning and when they're working, they have to be in their space. They don't have the luxury of being in sales like you do or consulting like I do. It's a lot easier for us to sort of like shave off 40 minutes or an hour here and there during the week to have that coffee.
I think if I'm starting at 3 a.m., hopefully I'm finished by midday, right? There's perhaps in that specific case, there's perhaps a few opportunities, but also that's about being intentional around where you're spending your time, right? If you're going to just be the person who finishes work and goes home and, it's Netflix and chill kind of thing, that's a wasted opportunity.
Yep.
I'm not sure the last time I would have done an 8-hour day, right? Work, the saying I coined a while ago, work is something you do, not somewhere you go, in my case, right?
Yep.
But it's also a mindset. So if I'm a baker, right, I've got to be where the commercial oven is and all those types of things. But then I can also use my skills and my talents to deliver lunch to an organization that I want to approach around maybe catering for their events.
Yep.
Right. So that starts to become an opportunity to then build a network and build an additional revenue stream for that organization.
I guess while you're talking there, I was even reflecting on this podcast. This is a great example of two guys who are collaborating and potentially, at least on the surface of it, in sectors that don't really always combine, but we start a conversation. And just for note, we're doing this at 9:30 at night, well easily past my bedtime, but we decide and we prioritize that this is important, and this is after I've been traveling, about 3 or 4 hours today to do a whole day workshop. We could have said, let's move this to another day. I guess, what we're role modeling or suggesting is if you want to get ahead and achieve some of those goals, you got to put that time aside.
Absolutely. It's an investment.
Yeah. And I like how you just use that word, because it's an investment. What a lot of business owners, and particularly maybe, in their first 2 or 3 years of ownership, they don't see that type of collaboration or networking, go into your chambers, go to BNI, all of those kind of tools. They see that as a cost, not as an investment. They see that as time that's not creating revenue, where in fact it's probably 10 times, 10x revenue once you gather that momentum and that knowledge and that sort of connections.
Absolutely. And it supercharges your business, right? I'm business mentoring a guy at the moment, and he's in the construction space, and we spent a bit of time working out what the key event was for people to want his services. So he doesn't build houses, but he builds sheds for people who probably typically live on a lifestyle block. And we spent a bit of time talking through, well, tell me about what's common with your clients. What's just happened to them and now they're coming to buy something off you? And we kind of worked out that one of the major themes was they've just bought the property. So guess who he's now building a network with? He's going out to find lifestyle real estate agents who they're selling the $3, $4, $5 million lifestyle property out in the sticks. If you're up in Auckland, maybe it's 10, 12 million, whatever, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
That's where that guy's got to be. So he's going to be investing his time connecting with those agents, because those agents, they've painted a vision for their client that they want to live in that property. And for them, that shed that they want to get built before they move in becomes a blocker to that person buying that property.
Or even your ride-on lawnmower or small tractor sales teams, because they'll want those little toys, and where do you put them?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. So that's the micro level. So there's a little bit to take out of, and totally encourage listeners, if you are an SME owner, read David's report, reach out to him on LinkedIn, and just ask him, get some clarity, have a conversation around that. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to do that. But there are nuggets in there that can mean something to lift the bar, as it were, from a performance point of view on an SME level, which is what we are all about. In that sense, what can the wider business community, so if we lift it up to a macro level, and this document is starting to float around and gather interest, what can that wider business community, and I mean economic development agencies, the ones that are still alive, certainly chambers, dare I say it, some ministers if they're interested, MB, all of that whole ecosystem, what can they learn and potentially implement based on your findings?
So knowledge is power. We need to have information to allow us to make better decisions. It's great to have all the exemplar businesses that, the frontier business reports or whatever the Productivity Commission came out with. But we need the SMBs that support those businesses to be high performing as well, because that's the engine room that's going to lift productivity for our country. Sorry, we can't launch enough rockets into space to raise the productivity level across the nation. And we also can't rely on the government. So we need to start at the ground level and build from there. So what I'd love to see is one of our New Zealand-based success stories, Xero, turn on the ability for businesses to not only measure their productivity on the platform, so I don't have to talk people through what type of business do you have and all this, just jump into Xero and do it. But also, imagine if they allowed benchmarking, so then you can find out where you sit on the bell curve for businesses like you. Now, a little bit of a challenge here and, wanting to create a bit of cross-Tasman rivalry. Perhaps the Australian founded MYOB might beat them to it, right? Additionally, the government, if it really wants to make a difference, then they could actually start talking on productivity across government departments. I know that sounds really ironic, productivity, government, departments all kind of going together, but they could also do that across the Crown-owned entities and lobby the NZX for businesses to report on their productivity levels. So that way the subject starts getting talked about as part of our reporting cycle with public companies and so forth on the 6 o'clock news, if that's, still a thing. Something else I'd like to see, and if you look at my report, I talk about the New Zealand Superannuation Fund. Taking an approach that, one of the I've forgotten the country, somewhere up near Norway, Scandinavia there somewhere. They're taking the money they make off oil and they're investing that into a future fund for, I think it's Denmark, to be a world leader in green energy, because they realize the fuel's going to run out or people are going to stop using it. So we need to have a plan for what's next. Given where our economy is and what it is based, where our nation is and what our economy is based on, which is exporting goods, milk powder, dairy, live animals, produce we grow and ship overseas, all these types of things, at some point we face the very real risk that the carbon miles are not worth paying from an environment perspective to actually get the products to the markets where the people want to use them. So people may stop buying those products from us. So in a way, we need to repurpose and this is very macro level, start thinking about how we transition our economy to more of a knowledge-based economy, where we export the knowledge of farming, the knowledge of growing. We don't export the actual produce. Innovation, that's really important too. But, as I've talked about, you need to have the building blocks in place before you can start to look at innovation. Because I think I quoted you in one of the comments that you made in our interview in my report. In the wrong hands, technology will just allow you to do dumb shit faster if you don't have great systems and processes. So productivity, it's a huge, complicated subject, but my hope is with the work I've done it provides businesses with a guide that they can start from and build what makes sense for them.
I'll use one topic, the last one first, and then go back to a couple of other questions. Innovation. Is it a role, and where does this role sit from a macro level about making that an understandable topic? Because I hear innovation, and I do think Subic and rockets going up, Xero creating this enormous, wonderful tool for accounting that's changed pretty much the landscape and cloud accounting, certainly in New Zealand, Australia, and overseas as well. But innovation doesn't necessarily mean that, does it?
No. In fact, innovation quite often gets confused with invention. And we have research and development tax credits, and those are talked about around innovation, but you need to come up with something new to be able to claim those research and development tax credits. So if you've got a manufacturing business that you've just bought and everything's manual and paper-based and all this sort of thing, and you come in and you completely transform that business by using existing technologies and existing capabilities and all this sort of thing, you've actually innovated and improved that business, but you haven't actually created anything new from it. This very interesting distinction. And I hold Apple up as an interesting organization from an innovation perspective. You know, if you talk to people who are Android users, I think you're one of them, aren't you? They'll always go, well, mine's got better.
I might go back after today, but anyway, yes, I am.
Yep. So every Android user I know goes, I've got better this and better that and better something or other else sitting in this, and I've got a 20 gigapixel something or other, whatever. Right?
I wouldn't
Happy
know
days. But what Apple did is they got all these things together, and yeah, they might have cobbled together slightly older technology, but they've made that work in a way that they've built one of the most valuable brands in the world. And they did it by focusing on simplicity, user experience, and by not moving away from that. So when you buy an Apple device, you know what you're getting, right? Actually, there was nothing about invention really with it. It was all innovation.
I think that there is a role for some entity to take that baton on, that challenge on, to really get clarity about what we mean around all of that. And I think possibly even MB calling them out, that's Ministry of Business and Innovation, and we need to get clarity, because if we've got clarity, then we know what the goalposts are and what is expected at a business and organizational level. So that's innovation.
And some of the follow-on content I'm producing or creating at the moment around innovation that fits into my productivity framework is what I term an innovation flywheel. So it's starting to think about how you innovate in a business. And again, innovation doesn't just mean technology. It could be investing in better equipment for your team to use because they can get the job done faster or whatever it is. But the idea is about making bets, well-educated bets on a series of things that could move your business ahead, and knowing that not all of those are going to come off, but also knowing that you're going to learn from doing.
Absolutely. And it's starting to veer a lot more into my sandpit around continuous improvement and business improvement, right? You've just got to start somewhere. I like that analogy of that flywheel. It's one that I've heard a long time ago, but I haven't heard it recently. So it's a good reminder of, innovate, do better, because then you can reinvest those gains, and it might be just time gains, which will then get your profitability up. But it's just starting somewhere, and it will be slow, but it's, what does Einstein say about compound interest? It goes nowhere for a while, and all of a sudden it shoots up.
Eighth wonder of the world.
Yep. And innovation and business improvement is very much that same component. You don't see a lot of it, then all of a sudden it's like watching your kids grow, and you thought that they're hip height, and now they're looking at you in eye to eye. So that's awesome. Reporting productivity. there needs to be some sort of management around this, and this goes back to episode 2, how we ripped apart all of those reports that were just illegible for the wider business community. And I know Xero, bless their cotton socks, they have taken up the challenge and reached out to us after we put these in light, and they're giving us some really good context, and we'll work on that over the next couple of months with them, which is awesome. But we need to manage that risk. You say that we need to have entities reporting from a macro level, but we need reporting for people. And I guess it goes back to plain language as well.
Yeah. Being able to compare your business to Fletcher Building, right? How great would that be? At a per person level, I'm as good, if not better, than one of the biggest companies on the New Zealand Stock Exchange.
Or it's not even comparing to a big entity, because they might have the ability to invest in all the top technologies and AI and the space that you're in, but it's comparing, my 30-person business with another one in Christchurch or up in Auckland, and it's apples and apples. Yeah, it's a for me, it's a curiosity to compare to the larger ones when you can break it down into some of those simple or simplistic metrics. But I guess that helps with that awareness, and it needs to be accessible too, not via one-off reports that are maybe even quarterly. That might help, but it needs to be accessible, easy to read, quickly download, with a few tips around what they can do.
Infographic.
Yep. Okay. Is there anything else at the macro level? What does the business community need to do? The obvious one, I know we talked about it before, but we'll go into that second tier of conversation of collaboration and networking.
I mean, the thing we talked about in the discussion we had with Natalie from Xero. Imagine if we turned on e-invoicing. Just imagine that. Every large organization you work with all of a sudden was able to e-invoice you, and it just magically appeared inside your financial system. How much time would that save you? That's a simple one. I mean, there's so much that can be done, but how can we get the simple things going and then build on those?
Support networks for, and I say startups always go equal tech and all of the flash fancy stuff, but new business owners, right? You're in years 1 through to 4, those critical years that if you pass that, the chance of success is greater. So how do we get drop-in centers in the local library to get those easy, accessible mentors? Bring a problem and let's solve it together as a community. So who coordinates that? And that's a challenge out there for, I think there are a number of agencies that could play that role. But lifting that conversation up, the government, that's where government support can help to invest in that space. Because we do have some of those agencies like Callaghan. I know that they've been unfortunately targeted with cutbacks at the moment. We've got the Regional Business Partner Network Fund, which I'm going to go on very much on public light that I think it's woefully underfunded. And that's the one tool that this country has that directly funds capability and development for our SME owners. In fact, their funding is literally called capability funding. So
which actually sits, that sits under the leadership development piece.
Yep.
For me, right?
And it can fit into the networking or the collaboration. That fund could create collaborative ecosystems that are like for like, but with an ecosystem for electricians. I guess this could be some of the trade groups that could be funded to also push that kind of stuff. You get a newbie, that's 2 years in, a Sparky that's 2 years into the business, alongside and collaborating and being mentored by one who is 20 plus years and has got a fleet of team. if they're all working smartly, there's enough work out there. But because we always say that we can't get a tradie for all intents and purposes, so we need to get more of them all working smarter so that they have got the ability to service when we need to. There's a lot of those ideas that need to be fleshed out, but if we follow those sub-themes, that could really guide the opportunities at a macro level.
Also, if we can get people taking action, then there's something for the government to invest into through the different channels that are available, as opposed to just throwing dead money at things. If we can get enough people taking action, looking for leadership and capability development, and if the RBPN funding runs out, then you've got a horde of really noisy people going, this is actually pretty useful and it's producing results.
Yep.
Nothing better than that. That's going to drive votes for someone, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and it's a good point, really, because let's not wait for the government. Have a few people that are willing to stick it out, get sponsorship. Those who, those larger entities that live on success of SMEs. So I guess that's financial institutions. We've talked about Xero, MYOB. There's a whole range of those enterprises that live off the profits of SMEs or the success of SMEs. So it's not waiting for a government handout and role modeling and building that momentum. I guess in the wellness space, Mike King was quite successful at doing that. He wasn't waiting around. He created a noise. Now, all decision politics aside, he's turned that into a successful funded service now. And it was a massive service doing good,
bloody great things, right?
Yeah. So that's the challenge out there for someone in that wider business community. Go and read David's report. See if there's anything there that can spark some ideas. We're always happy to collaborate. And I know that there are people out there that are keen to do it. We just need to get that flywheel started.
Totally. Jumpstart it. So for anyone who's interested in checking out that report, altena.solutions, register for my mailing list. You'll get a free copy of the report that I produced as a part of my MBA, which was with a focus on SMB productivity.
Awesome. Right. Is there anything, before we close it all down, before we just wind this episode down, is there anything that came out of your research that you just want to sort of highlight right at the end?
I really do think we've got a lost opportunity with the New Zealand Superannuation Fund. We've got businesses out there who are saying that they can't get investment and they're missing out on opportunities and these sorts of things. I do challenge that with the concept of, I also think we're not financially literate enough to sell the thing we're looking to do in business to a bank enough to invest in it. That's why they take the easy option and allow people to invest stupid money in houses. But if we could use some of that New Zealand Superannuation Fund money, and maybe they can co-invest alongside our banks and actually support that and de-risk those opportunities, then perhaps something could come out of that. And then what it means is it's New Zealand money investing back into New Zealand, much like I'm sure it's Denmark, who have got their sovereign wealth fund and are reinvesting back into their industries, right? Why not use our money to compound the benefits that are available for our country?
Yep. Okay. Good points. And there are a range of other points. So as a wrap up, I'd say thank you, David, for the conversation, not just tonight, but for the ones in the future. And I totally recommend people getting on their hands on that report. We could even do some links in the show notes. That will get us really tricky and fancy for a newish podcast. I know David does that side of things, so he's looking at me now going, thank you for mentioning that. Thank you for actually putting the effort in to create the report, to create the conversation. We are going to try and keep that conversation going through this podcast and through other ways. I think that's it for tonight. We will put this out and we're going to have a few other discussions over the next couple of episodes around similar topics. and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. You're a great guest. I might keep you on, actually. So, in all seriousness, thank you everyone for listening to the Better SMB podcast. We will be back on with another episode shortly. Until then, if you do want to ask us questions, reach out to either David or myself on LinkedIn. We're always there, and we're always happy to chat, collaborate, and talk about all things productivity in SMEs. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.